1.
On this Commitment Sunday, the Stewardship Committee would like to celebrate the history of our congregation.
Thank you. And today, Cindy Mattern, representative of the Stewardship Committee, and myself, George Freestone, kind of an ad hoc member of the Stewardship Committee, is here to share a presentation with you that I will bring up now. So on this very first slide, the cover sheet of our presentation, which is all about you, the congregation and the members of Advent, you can see in the upper right that lovely image that Sue Wagner put together of good news, great joy at Advent Lutheran Church. And indeed, you can see that in the picture of all of the members of the congregation taken at the start of the Rise Up and Build campaign. Picture on the left is one of our members in Puerto Rico serving others. The bottom is a member of some of the children at Advent at a VBS class. And at Advent, we're very blessed. We have several artists, one of which is Ginny Salzman. And there she drew a beautiful picture of the red doors on the 1928 building. But first, we're going to talk a little bit about the stewardship program. And I think, Cindy, you're going to take this.
Our stewardship program this year is around Romans 8, verses 35 to 39. Who will separate us from the love of Christ? Will hardship or distress or persecution or famine or nakedness or peril or sword? As it was written, for your sake we are being killed all day long. We are accounted as sheep to be slaughtered. No, in all these things, we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. For I am convinced that neither death nor life, nor angels nor rulers, nor things present nor things to come, nor powers, nor height, nor depth, or anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God in Christ Jesus our Lord. George? Kurt Heinlein was a dedicated member of the Stewardship Committee and a strong contributor to our church. He was a leader with Family Promise, and after he passed, we realized how many details there were to put on the Family Promise. His life was a blessing and a treasure. We hope that he will inspire all of us to make an impact to serve our church and our community. He's been a very, very good legacy for all of us to remember.
A very wise person suggested that maybe we bookend our presentation with a little bit about the initial building that we were in, and then the combined building at the end. And so we'll come back to that bookend a little bit later. But here, you can see a very unusual view of the 1928 building. I don't know about you, but I never had the realization of, first of all, how wide the 1928 building was. And secondly, I would have never guessed that we would have had all that ivy over one of the sides of that particular building. So that was an unfamiliar view for me. What was much more familiar was the view in the lower right, which is typical from maybe looking from the bank into the church. And I still remember the stained glass windows from the 1928 building, if not the pews from the sanctuary there. Now, people, a very important part of our forming as a congregation. And one of the individuals that we really wanted to know on this particular slide is Miriam Rhodes. She's that lovely woman in the upper left. And there she was at a worship service. I think it was taken at the last worship service in that 1928 building that was held during the Rise Up and Build campaign. I think Bishop Zeiser actually preached. And you can see another view of Miriam Rhodes in the elevator that was enabled by that particular Capitol campaign. Now here we've got some typical views of the 1928 building on the top right, lower left, with those red doors that Ginny Salzman painted, and with the side of the church, but maybe not quite with all the vine just yet. A nice snow-covered view of the church. And Pastor Weber, longtime pastor of our church, right there front and center in the lower left. Leadership. Here you can see many different views of how leadership takes place at Advent. In the left center, you can see one of our council presidents from the past, Bonnie Arner, and you can see that council team that she led in the lower left right below. You can see a committee at work. And yes, that's me actually pressing the bulb to take the picture of the camera with longtime members, Bob Yike, Gene Haggerty, John Weber, along with Pastor Fryer. Another view of church council in the upper right, except that one's from 1937. And then Pastor Fryer, our pastor emeritus, and longtime administrator Ann Bosler as well. Other pictures here include the men's group and a very important picture of VBS with John Brewster and Becky East leading the children in an activity.
People growing up at Advent. I grew up at Advent starting with the 3rd grade. And for many years, I was a member until I moved over 2 hours away. But when I came just an hour away, I rejoined the church because it just feels like home to me. There's something for everyone here. As you can see in the pictures, there's Vacation Bible School, men's breakfast, the quilters, women's group, and so much more. It was like coming home to me, coming back to Advent Lutheran Church.
Worship is a big part of the congregational life here at Advent. And here you can see several images that show worship over the years, from a baptism to communion at the rail, a playful Gary Boone being usher there, several views of the congregation in the midst of worship, Bishop Zeiser leading that last worship in the 1928 building that I referred to in the lower left, and one of our own, Lauren Blatt, in the upper left, who is now a pastor also within the Northeast Pennsylvania Synod.
How about music at Advent? There's all types. The top middle picture, which shows the old organ with Grace Heckman and Joanna Fryer, 2 people whom I know from my elementary and junior high school, were very prominent in the church when I was growing up. I was in the recorder choir. Anybody remember that? And the bell choir, as well as a singing choir when we had to put chairs out to accommodate all of us in the choir. How about the lower right-hand corner, the children's choir there in the old sanctuary? Now that's a full choir. And the one on the bottom left with a full bell choir.
And Cindy, one last point I might make about music, again, personalizing it. I have playing in the background here in my office the album that Bob Glick made from the pipe organ in our sanctuary, entitled The Organ at Advent.
Now we should tell that to my dad because he's going to say something about Bob Glick.
That's fine. And again, we can edit all of this stuff, our conversation here, out.
Yeah, great. Okay. Okay, this one's mine too. Then we added the 1960 building. You can see in the lower left side of the screen the program of the dedication. There's also the groundbreaking and laying of the cornerstone. The bottom center is Catherine Berger. She was the artist that drew that picture. And how about the mosaic in the center top? The mosaic at the altar. That is one of the main reasons that drew me back to this church. It's so beautiful. How about you? We have various ministries of service and outreach under the direction of ministries, Kathy Raphael. There are mealtime ministries, Common Ground, Family Promise, the mission trip to Puerto Rico, various crop walks, free libraries, food donations, hungry yard sale, and on and on. One thing I do want to share with you, the picture near the top left of a young John Wrights, a young veteran. I remember after taking communion, coming down the aisle and shaking hands with John Wrights. That will always be one of my favorite memories here.
This slide celebrates milestones that families within the Advent community have had a chance to experience. We've got baptisms, lower left, upper right. We have several weddings in the right lower center portion of this slide. 2 from the 1960 building and 1 from the 1928 taken from the balcony. You can also see the Johnson family celebrating a baby shower. That was a family that the members of Advent sponsored and assisted as they came to the United States. Another milestone, we have quite a few Eblings. Pastor Bayard Ebling, his wife Nancy, children and grandchildren in the Rose Room, all around their gift of that particular light that was enabled by them. 2 other milestones that I'd like to mention. First of all, Advent gets together at both happy times and reflective times. You can see a funeral meal in the dining area outside the kitchen. I believe that funeral was for the Bryce family when John Bryce just passed away. And a point of celebration, here you can see Pastor Fryer receiving his emeritus certificate. And this was during a celebration of the 50th year of his ordination. Now, Advent members have been very active in also trying to raise funds to improve our ministries and our facilities. And one individual I'd really like to celebrate who has been very active over a large number of years is Don Mattern. He's there in the center left in that small image in front of some stained glass work. And that stained glass work, you can see the Mattern family in the upper right is all celebrating their generous donation in memory of Ann Mattern to light those beautiful glasses in the foyer and in Memorial Hall. This page also gets to two of our capital campaigns, more recent ones. We've had several over the years, including Pony Express and others. But here we have two. First, the Rise Up and Build campaign did a lot to help with the improvement of the facilities of our 1928 and 60 buildings. You can see Larry Grabowski and Joanne France cutting the ribbon in front of the new office entrance as well. Another thing that we did with Rise Up and Build is actually filled in the second floor of the 1928 building. You can see a construction photo below one of the leaders, Larry Grabowski, right there. And the meeting that is taking place in the second floor, right behind that small picture of Don Mattern, wouldn't have been possible without that particular campaign. The Hope Out Loud campaign focused a little bit more heavily on ministries and communication, and the website in the center lower portion is part of the outcomes from that campaign, as is debt reduction that was celebrated with the cake that you see several enjoying in the lower left.
During the pandemic, we were able to stay connected. There's various images here of video services, various music that was captured, Bible study, and we even had a Saturday morning Zoom coffee get-together. This is all thanks to George Freestone, our tireless videographer and Zoom leader. We want to recognize George for his leadership, that he's provided all these platforms to enable us to have virtual church services and to do these various videos for our stewardship committee. Thank you, George.
Well, Cindy, thank you. And I'm just a small part of a very large team bringing this capability to our important Advent congregation.
I don't know about that.
Well, I spoke about a bookend at the very beginning of this presentation. And this is the closing bookend. And just as we had a piece of art from Ginny Salzman, if you think back, the red doors on that 1928 building, that beautiful image, here you can see her pencil drawing of the combined buildings, the 60 and the 1928 on the right. We have a very pretty picture of the combined buildings in the lower left, but I think I know a person who can relate a better story than I about the sign. Cindy, could you say a couple of words about that sign?
We were able to have a sign on Penn Avenue because many years ago, many years ago, before the Rise Up and Build even campaign, we purchased 2 homes along Penn Avenue in order to have road frontage, some parking and road frontage to be able to put that sign, install the sign.
Thank you very much. I think with that, we are now going to start with a little bit of a request around the stewardship appeal for 2020.
What can you do to help sustain our congregation? Commitment cards were mailed September 21st and include a return envelope with postage paid. So would you please return your commitment card back to the church by October 15th? Also, if you could consider an increase to your giving so we can continue our many stewardship programs. Thank you, and we hope you enjoyed the history of our congregation.